might find offensive.
It's 10 o'clock on a Thursday night in Glasgow. Football fans have gathered not for a match, but for a candlelit vigil. A vigil for a manager under attack. A vigil about the future of their game. A vigil which is a symptom of bigotry.
Just down to support the people that's been sent these terrible things in the post. You know, that's nothing to do with football. Nothing to do with football whatsoever. And what brings these people to do this sort of thing.
Will this year's football season be remembered less for what happened on the pitch than for what happened off it? With bombs, violence and religious hatred. Tonight we expose the extent of Scotland's sectarianism. Rangers versus Celtic. There's no bigger fixture in Scottish football. Old Firm passions always run high when the two teams clash. And today, the 7th time they've met this season, is potentially a title-deciding game. But there's more at stake at this match than just a football title. Recent events off the pitch mean tensions are heightened even more. The question is, can Scotland's football sectarian shame get any worse? And if so, will it be today?
There is trouble there, and you don't have to look for it. You've just got to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
You see your union flag, you're known as a fascist now, so... But we're not fascists, we're just proud of who we are and where we're from.
The fans know the world's eyes have been on them since parcel bombs made the headlines.
There's no evidence, there's no proof, and I think it might not be Rangers fans.
It's just stupid people that can't get a grip of themselves.
Two certain things I've learnt this year. One is you cannot upset a Celtic fan, and you cannot upset a Muslim.
It's a very good bit of nervousness before the game, you know, walking up this street alone.
Despite the tensions, everyone's hoping the football will come first.
Today it's about Glasgow Rangers and Glasgow Celtic, a good game of football, and Rangers win. That's basically what we want today, yeah.
The stadium's divided into blue and green, and many of Glasgow's pubs also split between supporters of each side. Glasgow's one city divided by a common game.
Celtic have a penalty. Given it 8 minutes from time.
Strathclyde police report a rise in crime, assaults and even domestic violence on Old Firm match days. But for once, as the final whistle blows, the police report a quieter than usual day. Glasgow remains a city riven by sectarian problems associated with its big football clubs. But how did this come about? How was it that sectarianism and football became intertwined and irrevocably linked? The National Football Museum might hold answers.
Look at the early kind of history of Rangers. You know, we now quite often, if people from the outside looking into Rangers, the fan base, they'll see Celtic being largely Catholic fan base, Rangers being largely Protestant. But in the early years of Rangers, you know, again, you can't really make the assumption that there was a Protestant outlook in the club. It was just another Scottish club at the time. But in terms of how the two clubs in the early years looked upon each other, there was actually quite a favourable outlook from both clubs. Some of the newspaper reports actually refer to almost like a close relationship between the two clubs.
One of the sports newspapers of the time in the 1890s said they had become so pally. And one of the reasons why they are called the Old Firm is because they exploited the rest of Scottish football for commercial advantage, including stealing players from smaller teams.
So if initially there was cordiality off the field, there was always rivalry on it. And that soon took on the additional elements with which we're familiar today.
The first stage is football rivalry, but because of the fact that the cry was up for a team to take on the Catholic Irishmen, for the sectarian dimension was there almost from the very beginning. And then over time you get Rangers becoming, if you like, the sporting champions of the Protestant people, but in particular, especially in the first 10 to 15 years, of Ulster Protestant immigrants. Because one of the vital things about this story is that Scotland's immigration from Ireland was a dual immigration. It was about 3/4 Catholic, but also about 1/4 Protestant, and it was overwhelmingly from the north of Ireland. So the sectarian tensions, which go right back to the 17th century, ironically aggravated by Scottish migration to Ulster, were decanted into West Central Scotland.
Two teams drawing supporters from two different groups with a common history, but also vital differences. Was it a recipe for sectarianism? But what exactly do we mean when we keep using the word sectarianism? Dictionaries define it as excessive attachment to a particular sect, especially in religion. Today we use it to mean hating someone just for their religion, Catholic or Protestant. When it comes to defining it here, for years it's inevitably been linked to football. Within the febrile atmosphere of the old firm rivalry, the problem of sectarianism has never been far from the surface, and it boiled over with a riot at the 1980 Hampden Park Cup final.
The place is now absolute pandemonium and turmoil. These are sad and disgraceful scenes.
30 years on, a new peak of bigoted hatred.
The headlines on Reporting Scotland this Wednesday lunchtime. After parcel bombs to Celtic boss Neil Lennon and two prominent fans, police warn other high-profile supporters to be on their guard.
It was the story that grabbed the world's media. Celtic lawyer Paul McBride was at the centre.
There's always been rivalry. I mean, but all over the world you see with different parts of the country and different football clubs having rivalry. The idea that you can't talk about a game or talk about a manager without receiving a device that could kill you is an extraordinary advance in just simply abuse in the street.
Do you think that things have got worse? And if so, why might that be?
They have got worse. There has been a bubbling cauldron beneath the surface of Scottish society for a long time about sectarianism on both sides, and it has never been properly addressed. People have tried to address it. Politicians prefer to ignore it for political reasons. It now requires to be addressed, because it wasn't simply me, it wasn't simply Neil Lennon. We had a member of the Scottish Parliament, a respected deputy presiding officer, aged 71, targeted for wearing a Celtic strip going to a charity do. Now, if we're at that level, then something requires to be done, and done urgently. This is not the 21st century in Scotland. I mean, we are in the 19th century in Scotland at the moment in relation to this issue. You'll remember many years ago the Nil by Mouth campaign was started after the brutal murder of a young boy wearing a Celtic top in Glasgow. And we all thought that was the beginning of the end of sectarianism. For a short time, it seemed to die down. Here we are, and now almost 10 years later, it inflaming again and appearing to be getting worse. And the internet's playing a part in that.
Insidious and ubiquitous, the explosion in the use of social networking sites has given a new lease of life in recent years to those wishing to spread sectarian bile.
As far as the internet is concerned in causing this, I think again it's simply a question of aggravation, giving a platform for it, but also, quite interestingly, revealing to us the dark underbelly of the way some people think. So although people might say the internet is a bad thing in terms of this area, which undoubtedly it is, it also gives us an insight into the scale of the problem we've got to deal with, into how we rid this society of this poison.
Far from football sectarianism dying out, the internet seems to be breeding a new generation of hatred and bigotry. A bigotry we decided to investigate when Celtic and Rangers met for